One. Hi, David. Good morning.
Hi, Pedro. Good morning. How are
Thank you
you?
so much for be able to do your presentation on a stable Wi-Fi for us in Israel, because now the internet is not stable, but you are using your own way to do it. Thank you so much for your
Yeah,
effort.
you're welcome.
Well, today you have here the second round to have the APAMTC talks with neck diagnosis in treating trauma and the polyvagal theory. That's what we will present today. And the floor is yours. We're here to learn.
Okay, so thank you, Pedro. Again, my apologies. I'm not in front of a computer. Oh, sham. I don't know what happened with the internet and all that. Usually we have a very good internet. So I found my location, a car where I have internet where I can talk to you all. So I'm very, very sorry about it. So I'm very apologize that there won't be a presentation because I'm not manager of the PowerPoint to get it up. So sorry about that.
No
Uh,
worries.
so
Mhm.
so let's dive already into it. So one of the things is that, in my experience, I've been practicing for I think over 18 years, a Yamamoto new scalp acupuncture technique. And one of the things that always comes into our account is how, and it is known that Yamamoto scalp acupuncture technique is very, very useful for neurological disorders, pain management, mainly pain management, and then neurological disorders such as stroke, Parkinson's disease, MS, and you name it, and it has very, very good effect. But one of the key points that actually in the last years, I've been, and even in my practice, I've been seeing that it not only has an effect on the how come this technique not only has an effect on the neurological side, but also something on the psychological side or uh, trauma side patients might have and all that. So a lot of times I would say, okay, if in Yamamoto we're working on the channels, then of course, if we're opening up the channels, opening up blockages of the channels, then of course it's going to have also psychosomatic effect and emotional effect on the patients. And actually, that was the theory I was going for. And as you know, I'm sure, as we all know around the world, in Israel, in the last nearly year and a half, we've been at war. Our country's been at war, unfortunately. And because of my work in a neurorehabilitational hospital, we started a neuro-orthopedic hospital here in Israel. We started getting veterans from war, or soldiers that were coming back from the battlefield of all injuries. And slowly, slowly, one of the things that was very, very, and the general idea is when we were practicing and treating these patients, the idea was to reduce the stress, reduce the muscle stress, reduce stress all over the body. And by doing that, you can regulate the nerve system and get them into actually a very healing process. So in my practice, slowly, slowly, when I started seeing that a lot of them had a lot of tension around the neck. And even by not even palpating the neck, relaxing the neck. And Yamamoto has a very strong connection between the neck diagnosis and his epsilon points that treat the channels or treat the organs in that manner. But the idea is once I started relaxing the neck on them, a lot of them were sleeping a lot better. Emotionally, they were a lot more stable. And actually, they were feeling a lot more relaxed. And this started me thinking and started me to start research into this idea. What is the importance of the neck? And in my search, I actually started stumbling into the idea of the connection. I've heard Kiko Motsunoma once speak about the connection between the vagus nerve and Parkinson's disease, and the accessory nerve and the Parkinson's disease, and the connection between the idea of the neck. And you can regulate the autonomic nerve system and the autonomic nerve system through working with the neck. And I started diving into that through that search on Parkinson's. And slowly, slowly, I started getting more intact with this amazing theory, which is called the polyvagal theory. And what is interesting that the polyvagal theory speaks about the idea of treating trauma. Okay, and it speaks about that actually the autonomic nerve system, we have two arms for the autonomic nerve system. What we know, what we learned in school, we have the sympathetic part, which is actually, as we know, regulates the sympathetic, gets us into a fight and flight situation. And then we have the parasympathetic situation, which is puts us into a rest and digest. Or when we rest and digest, we have ability of what's called social engagement. When we're more engaged with people, because we relax. We're not in a survival mode. We are relaxed and we can communicate with other people and etc. And actually, when I started digging deeper into this polyvagal theory, and that's where the polyvagal theory speaks about regulating the autonomic nerve system, but actually gives two parts to the parasympathetic nerve system. We have what is called, from the area of the brainstem, the vagus nerve. It's a very strong connection to the vagus nerve. Why the vagus nerve? Because the vagus nerve in general regulates the parasympathetic nerve system. If you start seeing and the word vagus comes from the word wander or wide or widely spread from Latin. And actually, when you start seeing where the vagus nerve comes, it actually regulates all or innervates the whole digestive system, but also innervates the area of the chest, the heart, the larynx, the pharynx, the vocal cords. Okay, it regulates that, and when that's activated, we get into a rest and digest situation. So that's why the connection to the vagus. Now, why polyvagal? Because actually, Stephen Purges, who came up with this idea in 1996, spoke that there's actually three parts to the autonomic nerve system. There's the sympathetic, which regulates, as we know, through the sympathetic, puts it in fight and flight. But then in the parasympathetic, we have two stages. And if you go into histology and you start looking at the vagus nerve comes out of the brainstem, and it splits into two areas, what is called the dorsal part and the ventricle part. The dorsal part of the vagus nerve actually has got to do something with when we were primitive. If you go into evolution, when we were reptiles. And when that part is actually activated, we kind of faint or play dead, okay? Because the immune system, or not the immune system, the nerve system is in such high levels of stress that actually the body says to myself, I can't sustain this anymore. And then it shuts down, okay? And we lock up and we kind of play dead. Our heart rate goes down, our breathing goes down. And actually, we had a stage that we kind of plain dead, okay? Now, that's the dorsal horn. Now, what it's got to do is the ventricle horn. The ventricle, and it's unlaminated, okay? The myelin, it doesn't have myelin on it. And it's actually an autonomic response that we don't have any control of it. So you could think about like war soldiers. I spoke about war soldiers that are in war and now they freeze, okay? Because that's actually the system is trying to protect them. It says, okay, you can't sustain the stress no more, and it shuts down. Or unfortunately, a lot of stories about women or females that have been raped and they just fainted or played dead in some manner, okay? That was the system trying to protect them, just locked down, okay? And then we have what is called and that innervates actually the lower part from the diaphragm down to all the digestive system and shuts the system down, okay? Then we have, which is called the ventricle part. The ventricle part is more useful for what we want to do when we want to be in a rest and digest situation, but in a stage of in a social engagement. And that actually, the ventricle part of the vagus nerve innervates the chest area, the heart rate, the vocal cords, okay, the area of the necks as well, and we'll speak, and has other connections to different cranial nerves. It connects to 4 more cranial nerves. One of them is the vagus, okay, the vagus comes from the ear, innervates, then it goes down the neck, digestive system, connects to the facial nerve, and the trigeminal nerves. Think about the facial and trigeminal. That's also our contact with social engagement, a connection with. We want to be in a connection with people. And then we have the connection with number 9, nasopharyngeal, the area of the throat. That's why when we play with our voice, we can calm ourselves or regulate ourselves and relax ourselves. Think about that idea also of the vagus nerve connection to the facial nerve. When we under stress what are the things we do? We kind of massage our face in some manner, and that actually relaxes us because that's through the facial nerve we connect to the vagus nerve, which is relaxing us and bring it to a state of social engagement. And then coming to what's important for us for Yamamoto, another connection the vagus nerve has a strong connection to is to the accessory nerve. The accessory nerve innervates the sternocleidomastoid muscle and innervates the trapeze muscle. Now the trapeze muscle has three parts: is the upper trapeze, horizontal trapeze, and lower trapeze. Okay. Now what happens as life goes on? We had that forward head bends because actually the trapeze muscle weakens. The innervation of the accessory nerve to the trapeze muscle causes a weakness and it puts stress on the neck. Now let's think about what happens when you put stress on your neck. Immediately, your nerve system puts up an idea that you're in stress and again fires off the autonomic nerve system, fires off the sympathetic nerve system and puts you in fight and flight. So the idea is that actually by working through the neck and relaxing the neck, you actually kind of connecting to the vagus nerve. Okay, connected to the vagus nerve, you're regulating the parasympathetic nervous system, and you actually relaxing and calming the patient down. Now, remember, when I spoke about, if you remember in the beginning, I said that the vagus nerve has two parts, right? You have the vagus, which is the dorsal horn, which is below the diaphragm down, and that's kind of bring us to the time of memory of reptiles. And then we have the ventricle. Now they're connected to each other. Now, what happens in the digestive system of the lower part of the diaphragm, the dorsal horn, I have no control of that. That what it sends out, the signals of the story that the organs are telling me, I have no control about. But what I do have a control of is of the ventricle. And by innovating or telling a story, a different story to the vagus, to the ventricle part of the vagus, I'm actually managing to connect to the dorsal part and actually really getting myself into a stage of relaxation. So actually, and then the connection to the accessory nerve, when I'm relaxing the neck and connecting the neck to the organs in the channel, no matter what I do, I'm actually regulating the parasympathetic nerve system. And by regulating it, I'm relaxing the patient and I'm actually healing. Bringing him into a position that I can heal trauma and even post-trauma. And this is why Yamamoto scalp acupuncture technique, which is, you could say, different from the other Chinese scalp acupuncture, from Jiao scalp acupuncture, or even somehow induced scalp acupuncture, has the ability to regulate and heal trauma as well. Also psychosomatic trauma, and also physical trauma. Now, in our course, we're going to speak about two levels because we have one part of the connection. One part of the connection to that idea is the vagus nerve. But there's another strong connection, and that's through the fascia tissue. So in our courses that Avi and I give, we speak more in depth now because we have a lot more knowledge how through the neck diagnosis, we have a strong connection to the vagus nerve, but we also speak in depth about the fascia and how also the fascia has a very strong connection to healing trauma and working with trauma and physical disorders. If you think about it, just for an idea that the fascia tissue is the largest sensory organ throughout the body. It connects from the inner part, from the outer part. It covers this whole body. It keeps telling us that story. And actually, it also collects the idea of trauma. So we'll also learn the importance and how scalp acupuncture or Yamamoto works, the mechanism of how it works through the fascia, through the vagus nerve. And we actually give you a very strong connection, also very simple techniques that you can do with your patients to regulate the autonomic nerve system and regulate the parasympathetic nerve. But this is just a touch of what we'll be speaking about. But when we come into the course, we'll go deeper into this idea. So, so if there's any questions of how it works, so I want to just give you a tip before I go. When you come into treating your patients, come to the area of the neck and go to the center area of the neck to around large intestine 11, large intestine 18, 17 area. If there's a lot of stress there, that's also you have a trigger point theory. So that's the center trigger point on the sternocleidomastoid. And if you have a lot of tension there and you know your patient's in stress in that clinic, go just to the root of the ear, just above the root of the ear, go about a centimeter up and look for a tender area here, which is tender. When I feel the tenderness here, and then pushing down it, you feel that the neck area is relaxed, and put a needle there. Perpendicular, just put a needle there and let your patient lie down and rest. And I'm sure after about 2 to 5 minutes, you'll very much feel relaxed, and you'll see how a lot of these muscle tension throughout his whole body will relax. And why? Because that's a connection between the accessory nerve and the liver point, which Yamamoto connects the liver point to the vagus nerve. So we also innervate in the vagus nerve, relax in it, and you'll see how the whole system relaxes and calms down itself. So you can use it in your clinic already today or tomorrow. Give it a try and see what happens.
Yeah, it will be great. It works, right, David? We are on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. Alguém tem alguma pergunta que queira fazer? Someone has any question to make? Do you have
Yeah, if I might. Relating with treating traumatic experiences, are you hearing me okay?
Not clear. Yeah,
okay.
That's okay.
I'll just take off my...
I'm not here.
Okay, something happened in the connection. We will try to...
Well, what I want to also mention that these theories that we're speaking about is actually unique to other courses of Yamamoto globally that have been taught. This is very unique for our course going over these subjects.
Yeah,
which is very different too.
The interrelation between the systems, it's true. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Loud and clear.
Yeah, okay. So my question is, when treating traumatic events, even psychosomatic or just physical, but mostly psychosomatic, it's better to address the roots area, or it's better to address the cranial nerves area on the top of the head?
There's a very, look, I'm sure that according to your question, I understand you're familiar with scalp acupuncture. So Yamamoto has epsilon points and has cranial nerve points.
Yes.
Both of the areas innervate the vagus nerve. Also the cranial and also the epsilon innervate just in different parts, in different levels. So you can work the same with this one and also with the cranial nerve of the 11 cranial nerve. No, sorry, 10 cranial nerve.
Yeah, but it's in terms of results, in terms of action, which of the areas it's best for the patients in psychosomatic trauma? Do you notice any differences?
No, I don't know. I only notice the difference between the cranial nerves and the epsilon when the trauma or when there's traumatic brain injury, then the cranial nerves are more effective than the epsilon. But otherwise, if there's no traumatic brain injury, they're both effective because the epsilon also have a strong connection to the fascia as well. And through the fascia, you actually regulate the system as well.
Okay, I understand. And just a final question. Between the epsilon area yin or yang, is there any difference in the results?
Yes, no, there's no difference. It depends. Look, Yamamoto mentions that you have 98% of the treatments you work with the yin aspect. If the yin aspect doesn't have any effect, you can work with the yang. The only difference where there'll be a difference between the yin and yang is with a patient with multiple sclerosis. But otherwise, you have to see which has more effect on the patient. But in general, most of the treatment should be done applied on the yin aspect. This is also with discussions I've had with Dr. Yamamoto.
Okay, thank you very much, David.
You're welcome.
Any other question or someone else
So thank you, Pedro.
we will receive you in the next year on March. Okay? Thank you
Okay,
so much
thank
for
you.
your time. It was a pleasure again to meet you and share your knowledge with us. Thank you so much for your
Okay,
time.
thank you, Pedro. Thank you a lot. See you.
See you.